Hi dear. Frank Lloyd Bear and I are back. Say hi, Frankie. With a couple more chapters from The Joyful Bear. Chapter 16, Snow. Even more than car horns or chocolate chip cookie air, Frankie loves snow. It's a polar bear thing, he explains. He was on his way to the North Pole when he got lost and landed in North Carolina. I never asked him where he started or how he ended up in North Carolina. Snow is always a special delicacy for my bear. Every flurry sends him into ecstasy. A patch of snow seen through a car window when we cross a mountain pass is bliss. Even the sight of a snow-capped mountain from hundreds of miles away makes him come alive. Snow, 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 he calls out to make sure I don't miss the precious sight. Snow brings out Frankie's secret superpower. It's what gives him his energy, what makes him come alive. Do you wish you lived at the North Pole, Frankie? No. Why? He says, puzzled. Then you would have snow all the time, I point out. You'd be a very powerful polar bear. But I wouldn't have you, he says. Just as Frankie is passionate about snow, and Winnie the Pooh is passionate about honey, I am passionate about teddy bears. Your passion is unique to you, not something you do to please or impress someone else. I have known people with a lifelong passion for quiet pursuits, like bonsai or orchids. Others are passionate about activities that are much more social, like my friend Ben, who follows cover bands and goes to see several each weekend. What do your friends speak passionately about? Mine talk about diverse subjects like pole dancing, quilting, backcountry skiing, Civil War history, archery, transit systems, pug rescue, and fire spinning. Passions are very personal even when you share them. Gandhi was driven by a personal passion for justice. Your passions may change over time, or you may focus on one area, becoming an expert through sheer number of happy hours you spend on an activity or interest. Over the past 20 years, as my focus moved from sailing to writing to art, my sister Julie became an expert in blues and soul music. She spends hours each week preparing for a 2-hour radio show, giving her a depth of knowledge that's driven by her passion. What makes you come alive? What brings you energy? Whether you keep it to yourself or share it with others, be sure you recognize it and feed it. To live a joyful life, you must never let the flame of passion inside you go out. Is not life 100 times too short to bore ourselves? Friedrich Nietzsche. Change. I wonder what I would look like with brown fur, says Frankie. Then you wouldn't be a polar bear, I respond. And an earring in my nose, he continues. No, wait. If it's in my nose, it can't be an earring, can it? I'm sure his line of thought is leading somewhere, but I can't figure out where. If I wanted a tattoo, I'd have to shave. I'm too furry, he says, more to himself than to me. Why do you want to change the way you look, Frankie? I'm just letting myself think about it. I'm not planning to do anything right now. Do you want me to change something about the way I look, I ask him. I just want you to think about it. Every once in a while when the subject comes up, I think about tattoos. I have never been able to think of an image important enough to be permanently displayed on my body, and I tell Frankie so. Good, he says. Why are you saying good? I thought you were trying to convince me to think about a tattoo. Exactly. I wanted you to think about a tattoo. You tried one on in your head. Then you decided not to get one. You thought about changing your mind. I think about dyeing my hair or getting a piercing and decide not to. Frankie decides against the nose ring. It's a nice thought exercise. After taking some deliberate time to think about possible changes, we decide that we are satisfied with the way we are. I return to my reading on the computer. Okay, Now I'm changing my mind, Frankie says, pointing at the screen with his paw. The article he's pointing to is a journal written by the brother of a friend, someone I've never met. Jim is describing what it feels like to have cancer. And there's a part of me, call him Big Jim, and he's coldly logical and a planner, and he's worked out all the contingencies and makes sure that everything that needs to happen does in fact happen. Then there's Little Jim, who wonders why people keep sticking needles in him and why he feels sick and has to go to the hospital every day. And then in the radiation oncology waiting room, there's a 6-month baby there, bald, with a big scar running across the back of her head. And that seems terribly unfair. And across the room, there's a 3-year-old, and it's her first day. And then Little Jim walks outside, and the sun is shining, and the little sparrows and chickadees are building nests in the awnings over the sidewalks. So he stops to observe, and he sees one on the ground with a huge wad of twigs in its mouth. And it takes off, but can only get a foot off the ground before coming back down. And it tries a few more times before releasing its load and just picking up one twig. And then Big Jim says that they really shouldn't let birds nest in a patient waiting area, since that's going to get messy with bird droppings. And Little Jim tells him to shut up and not ruin the moment, and life is good. I like sunshine and birds, and I think life is good, says Frankie thoughtfully. Does this have something to do with tattoos and piercings? No, that was just a warm-up. He declares dramatically, I want to be little Frankie. It's a shock. As long as we've been together, he's been fighting the word little. It does not apply to him, and he tells everyone so. He is a big bear. As I'm staring at him, trying to comprehend the enormity of this change, he says, It's okay to change your mind, Margaret, even about important stuff. Until he ran across Jim's words, Frankie never considered that little could be applied to him in a good way. Now that he had new information, he changed his mind. But I am not a bear. How can I change my mind without breaking promises or disappointing people? Well, you also made promises to yourself, says Frankie. You promised to be the best person you can be. Right, and if I break those promises, I won't be the best person I can be, Frankie, I say. Those promises were made by the person you were then. You are a different person now. You have to let yourself think about who you are now and whether those are still the right promises based on what you know now. In other words, I might need to change my mind to be the best person I can now. Yep. When you get watered, you have to let yourself grow. I am growing from big to little. There are two kinds of change, the kind we choose and the kind that affects us. To paraphrase Shakespeare, some of us achieve change and others have change thrust upon them. When Frankie and I were looking at our current choices and thinking about the changes we could make, we were conducting a valuable mental exercise. We were preparing ourselves for the changes we can't control, the ones that are thrust upon us. We were beefing up our resiliency. William Bridges writes that every transition has 3 parts: an ending, a neutral period, and a new beginning. The transition process is really a loop in the life journey, a going out and away from the main flow for a time, and then a coming around and back. From transitions, making sense of life's changes. Life is dynamic by its nature, and we cannot stop the river of time. The more we resist change, the more painful it will be. When we recognize that life is a roller coaster, we can enjoy the loops, let ourselves be shaken up, and then get off and embrace the next phase as a joyful new beginning. I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have changed several times since then. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. That's it for today's reading. I wonder how different you'll be when you come back tomorrow. Have a great day.